Lately, certain people have been affecting you differently. Some conversations stay in your mind for hours. Certain reactions feel strangely personal. Small interactions trigger emotions that seem bigger than the moment itself. And the strange part is, it's not really about them. Not completely. Because Gemini season carries a psychological effect most people never notice consciously. It turns other people into mirrors. Suddenly, the traits you admire begin revealing parts of yourself you've ignored. The behaviors that irritate you begin exposing hidden insecurities. The tension you feel around certain people starts uncovering emotional patterns buried deep beneath your normal awareness. And once this process begins, you stop seeing conversations the same way. Because this season doesn't just change communication, it changes perception. Gemini energy speeds up mental awareness. It forces the mind to observe itself through other people, and that can become deeply uncomfortable. Because most people spend years believing their emotional reactions are caused entirely by the outside world. But what if many of those reactions are actually reflections? Reflections of fears you haven't healed, needs you haven't acknowledged, truths you haven't wanted to face. That's why this season feels emotionally intense for so many people. Not because the world suddenly changed, because awareness did. And once awareness sharpens, your relationships begin revealing who you really are beneath the personality you've learned to perform. Most people think they see reality clearly. They don't. They see reality through emotional filters, through memory, fear, pride, past experiences, unhealed wounds. That's why two people can experience the exact same conversation and walk away with completely different emotional reactions. Because the human mind is constantly projecting itself outward, and Gemini season intensifies this process dramatically. This energy moves through thoughts, communication, and psychological awareness. It speeds up observation, not only of others, but of yourself. That's why people suddenly feel more emotionally triggered lately. Not because everyone around them changed overnight, because their unconscious patterns are becoming more visible. The irritation you feel towards someone's arrogance may reveal the part of yourself desperate for validation. The jealousy you feel towards someone's confidence may expose how disconnected you've become from your own potential. Even attraction can become a mirror. Sometimes the qualities you deeply admire in others are actually qualities your soul has been trying to awaken within yourself. But most people never pause long enough to recognize this. They remain trapped in reaction, blaming, judging, escaping, without realizing the external conflict is often reflecting an internal one. And that realization changes everything. Because once you understand that your reactions contain information, you stop treating emotions as random. You begin observing them, questioning them, learning from them. That's the hidden psychological invitation inside Gemini season to become conscious of the mind itself, not just your thoughts, the deeper patterns beneath them. There's a reason some people suddenly feel heavier lately. Conversations that once felt normal now drain your energy quickly. You leave interactions feeling mentally exhausted without fully understanding why. And during Gemini season, this becomes impossible to ignore. Because this energy increases awareness around emotional authenticity. You begin noticing when people speak without honesty, without presence, without emotional depth. Surface-level communication starts feeling empty. Forced positivity feels artificial. Repetitive conversations become emotionally unbearable. But the deeper truth is this: the exhaustion isn't always caused by them. Sometimes it's caused by the version of yourself you become around them. The version that filters itself, suppresses honesty, pretends to feel comfortable. That's the mirror effect. People reveal parts of your identity you normally avoid noticing. Some mirrors reveal confidence you abandoned. Others reveal fears you still carry. And some relationships reveal how disconnected you've become from your authentic self. That's why Gemini energy often disrupts social dynamics. Not through dramatic endings at first, through awareness. You begin realizing which interactions expand your energy and which ones slowly diminish it. And once awareness notices emotional misalignment, the nervous system struggles to tolerate it the same way. This is why so many people suddenly crave distance during this season. Not isolation, clarity. Because clarity changes tolerance. Once you consciously recognize emotional performance, you stop comfortably participating inside it. And that realization forces difficult questions. Questions many people spend years avoiding. Who am I when I stop performing for acceptance? What relationships actually feel real? What parts of myself have I been hiding to remain emotionally safe? Gemini season doesn't answer these questions immediately. It forces you to confront them. This is the part most people resist hearing. The qualities you judge most harshly in others often exist somewhere inside yourself too. Not always in identical form, but symbolically, psychologically. Because the mind reacts strongest to patterns it recognizes emotionally. That's why certain behaviors trigger disproportionate emotional responses. Arrogance, neediness, manipulation, insecurity. Sometimes the intensity of your reaction reveals unresolved conflict inside yourself. And Gemini energy exposes these hidden reactions with uncomfortable precision. Suddenly, your emotional triggers become louder, harder to rationalize. You start noticing how quickly you judge people internally, how often your mind compares, projects, defends, escapes. And at first, this awareness can feel painful because the ego prefers external blame. It prefers believing discomfort always comes from the outside world. But real transformation begins the moment you realize your emotional reactions are revealing parts of your own consciousness. That realization changes the entire purpose of relationships. People stop becoming random characters in your life. They become psychological mirrors. Some mirrors reveal your fears, others reveal your suppressed potential. Some reveal emotional wounds that still shape your decisions unconsciously. And others reveal identities you've outgrown but still cling to out of habit. That's why Gemini season often feels spiritually exposing. This energy speeds up mental recognition. You begin seeing hidden patterns everywhere. In conversations, in relationships, inside yourself. And once you see those patterns consciously, your old unconscious behaviors start losing control over you. Most people spend their entire lives trapped inside automatic thinking. They react instantly, judge instantly, defend instantly, without ever observing the process happening internally. But Gemini energy creates separation between awareness and reaction. It activates the observer, the quiet part of you capable of watching your thoughts instead of immediately becoming them. And that changes everything psychologically. Because the moment you observe your mind clearly, you realize how much of your identity operates unconsciously. Patterns repeat automatically. Emotions rise automatically. Defensive behaviors activate automatically. And for the first time, you begin seeing those mechanisms while they happen. That's why this season can feel mentally overwhelming. Not because your mind is broken, because your awareness is expanding faster than your old identity can control. You begin noticing contradictions within yourself, the difference between what you say and what you actually feel, the difference between your public personality and your private emotional reality. And once awareness sees those fractures, inattention increases. Because consciousness naturally pushes toward integration, toward honesty, toward alignment. That's why Gemini season often creates a feeling of psychological exposure, like your own mind is revealing things you can no longer ignore. But this process is necessary, because the observer inside you is the beginning of freedom. When you can observe your fear, you stop fully obeying it. When you can observe your emotional patterns, you stop unconsciously repeating them. And when you can observe your identity clearly, you finally gain the ability to transform it intentionally. Once awareness reaches a certain level, relationships stop feeling simple. You begin seeing hidden emotional dynamics beneath ordinary interaction. You notice who listens only to respond, who seeks validation constantly, who avoids honesty, who drains energy without realizing it. But the most unsettling realization is this: you begin noticing your own patterns too. The moments you silence yourself to avoid conflict, the moments you pretend agreement for emotional safety, the moments you shape your personality around acceptance. And that awareness changes how you connect with people forever. Because once you recognize emotional performance, authenticity becomes impossible to fake convincingly. That's why many relationships shift during Gemini season. Some deepen unexpectedly. Others begin fading naturally. Not because anyone became bad, because awareness creates emotional clarity. And clarity changes connection. You start craving conversations with presence, with honesty, with psychological depth. Surface-level interaction stops feeling nourishing. Not because you've become emotionally superior, because your consciousness is evolving. An evolving awareness naturally seeks more meaningful forms of connection. This is one of the hidden spiritual aspects of Gemini energy. It doesn't just expose communication externally, it exposes alignment internally. You begin asking yourself, can I actually be myself around these people? Do these relationships reflect who I'm becoming, or who I used to be? And those questions quietly transform your entire emotional world. Because relationships are never only about other people. They're about the version of yourself each connection activates. Most people spend years fighting external battles, trying to control circumstances, control people, control outcomes, believing their suffering is entirely caused by the world around them. But Gemini season reveals something deeper. The greatest conflict in your life may not exist outside you at all. It may exist between different versions of yourself, the part of you seeking growth and the part terrified of change, the part craving honesty and the part addicted to emotional comfort, the part ready to evolve and the part still emotionally attached to old survival patterns. That internal conflict shapes far more of your life than most people realize. It influences relationships, choices, reactions, identity itself. And Gemini energy exposes this psychological split with unusual intensity. Suddenly, your own contradictions become visible. You notice how often fear disguises itself as logic, how often emotional avoidance disguises itself as being realistic, how often your mind creates distractions to avoid uncomfortable truth. And once awareness sees these patterns clearly, you can't fully return to unconsciousness again. That's why this season often feels mentally intense, because the illusion of certainty begins dissolving. You realize parts of your personality were built around protection rather than truth. Protection from rejection, failure, judgment, uncertainty. But eventually, survival-based identities become prisons, and Gemini energy begins unlocking those mental cages through awareness. Not force, awareness. Because awareness naturally destabilizes illusion. And once illusion weakens, real transformation begins quietly beneath the surface of ordinary life. Sometimes the people who disturb you most are the ones revealing what you need to see. not intentionally, symbolically. Because mirrors don't exist to comfort you. They exist to reflect. And Gemini season increases these reflective experiences dramatically. You may encounter people who challenge your identity unexpectedly. People who expose emotional weaknesses you normally hide well. People who force you to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself. At first, the instinct is resistance, judgment, defensiveness, distance. But beneath that emotional reaction, something deeper is happening. Your consciousness is expanding through friction. Because growth rarely begins in comfort. It begins when awareness collides with truth. And sometimes another person becomes the catalyst for that collision. Not because they're perfect, because they trigger recognition. Recognition of your wounds, your fears, your hidden desires, your unexpressed potential. That's why emotionally intense interactions often change people permanently. They reveal hidden parts of the self. And once those hidden parts become conscious, transformation becomes possible. This is the deeper meaning behind the mirror mind theory. Life is constantly reflecting your inner world back to you. Through relationships, through attraction, through conflict, through emotional reaction. And Gemini energy speeds up those reflections until they become impossible to ignore. The question is no longer, what are people doing to me? The question becomes, what is this experience revealing about me? At some point during this season, a realization begins forming quietly inside you. The people around you were never random. Neither were your reactions. Every emotional trigger carried information. Every relationship reflected consciousness. Every conversation revealed hidden parts of your inner world. And suddenly, life stops feeling superficial. You begin seeing deeper psychological meaning beneath ordinary interaction. The world itself starts feeling symbolic, reflective, alive with hidden mirrors. That's what Gemini energy awakens, awareness of the connection between perception and reality. You realize your mind has been shaping your emotional experience far more than you understood. Not through magic, through unconscious interpretation, projection, meaning, identity. And once you become conscious of that process, everything changes, because awareness breaks automatic living. You stop reacting unconsciously to every emotional impulse. You stop immediately believing every thought. You begin observing yourself with honesty instead of avoidance. And that honesty transforms people. Slowly, quietly, permanently. That's why Gemini season can feel emotionally intense. It's not only exposing the world around you, it's exposing the relationship between your mind and reality itself. And once you truly see that connection, you can never experience human interaction the same way again. Because now you understand, the mirrors were everywhere all along. And every reflection was trying to wake you up.